Yeah. So second game with the theme of central control. So let's go ahead. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. This we know. Bishop to B5. All of you, I think you will know this is the Roy Lopez opening, and it is a very, very powerful opening, but slightly more slower than the Italian opening, but has got much more lasting advantage, but a slow attack. Okay, so not direct attack on F7, but indirect attack on E5 pawn. That is the idea of bishop to B5. And black has got many defenses here. Black can play D6, black can play A6, black can play knight F6. Okay, black can even play G6. But here what black goes for is a Shillman defense. I think it is a slightly risky defense for black. But it is okay many times, especially masters when they are playing against slightly weaker thing, but they are playing black, so they will employ such kind of risky things because they know something somewhere or the other white is going to make a mistake and I will capitalize on it. And if they don't do it, then otherwise they have to be always be happy with a very defensive game, which they don't want, in which case they go for an attacking setup like this. Okay, so f5, it is an interesting move, but it is a slightly dangerous move for black. So then knight c3, knight f6, and queen e2. So because the black pawn has come out and threatening the e pawn, so white develops the queen. It's a good natural square for the queen also, because he will want to put the rook on d1. Okay, and so queen e2 in Roy Lopez is a very okay move, very standard move. So black takes this pawn, white takes it, and black develops the d pawn, opening up the bishop's diagonal, and white immediately strikes back at the center. Okay, white thinks that he has got a slight advantage in the center, and the only way to do it is by actually exchanging or directly taking direct action. So let us see what happens. See, the pawn, first of all, black is not winning any pawn. Okay, because the knight is pinned, knight on c6 is pinned. And if at all black captures the pawn, it will only be to the advantage of white. Okay, so if black plays e takes d4, then knight to knight to f6 is a discovered check and a double check, right? I mean, it is much thing. So it is definitely a great advantage for white. So black cannot take it, but instead on d4, black develops his bishop modestly to d7. Okay, and now there is a threat on d4 pawn, definite threat on d4 pawn. So white does not wait for that. White does not defend it in any way, like a c3, etc. Instead, white says, okay, I am calling shots in the center. Let me see what you have got. So black plays knight, knight takes e5, and white. It is interesting here whether if white takes the bishop on d7, then everything will be okay, because then what will black do? Black will take back the bishop with a knight and then develop his I mean, he will be quite okay, right? So instead, white takes, knight takes e5. Now black has got an option. Black can exchange the bishops first. Probably he should, I think. Only thing is that what will happen is queen takes b5, bishop takes b5, queen takes b5. You'll have to put knight d7 or something. It is a bit defensive. Black will get pinned, etc. So black does not want that. So black takes d takes e5, and now is a good move for white is bishop to g5. Bishop to g5 is a good move, developing move, and attacking as well at the same time, preparing for a queenside castle. Do you notice that queenside castle and the bishop on d7 will be under serious threat? So that is why bishop to g5 is a very good move here. So black responds by unpinning the knight, and white at this point, see these are so it is an instructive position how white has got a slight advantage in the center, but how he senses the right thing to do here. So when to exchange, when not to exchange, it is not so clear. Okay, so you have to do that with a lot of games. You have to go through to understand. So in this case, white thinks that exchanging, and actually it is true, exchanging this is better. Okay, exchanging this is better, and we'll see why. Okay, bishop takes f6. We will see what if pawn had taken on f6. The whole point of bishop coming was that he doesn't want to let the pawn thing. But if at all, then yeah, Madhura, you're right. Queen h5 is the right move, forcing the king to move, and then castle queen side, and you have got a tremendous attack against the king now. Right, bishop will come to c4, then king will go to probably to, I don't know, king will go to g7 here. If queen comes to e8, then queen h6 is actually a checkmate, right? So queen e8 is otherwise very tempting to stop the f7 mate, but only real move is that king to g7, and then rook to e3. Sorry, rook to d3, because rook is coming to g3 square, right? So this is how it could have happened if black had taken with g takes f6, but that is not happening. So here bishop is taking on f6, and still queen to h5 is coming. There is a tactic involved. It is not very obvious what is the tactic involved. Can you see what is the tactic?
So capturing the bishop on d7.
That is what. Not on f6 yet, but capturing the bishop on d7. So if queen takes it, then you are going to lose the queen.
Then you're gonna get the queen.
Yeah.
By...
So if queen doesn't take it, then what? You will have to take it with the king, right?
Then you can put your. Then you can either castle or put your rook to e1.
Then the whole point is castle queen side.
Yes, sir.
Castle queen side, and immediately you are threatening. I mean, you are checking, and then king will go to e7. Now you think, okay, if king goes to c6, then rook takes. This is very clear, because, right, this is very clear. And why it is very clear is that bishop, if bishop goes back to d8 to capture the rook, then the pawn on e5 is also falling. Pawn on e5 is falling, queen is taking on e5, and then threatening the rook, plus threatening a queen to c5 check, which will become deadly, right? Can you imagine that if rook takes rook, then the bishop is simply not bishop yet. First, I think white will still save the queen, and then will take the bishop. But queen can come to f3 also, right? And if bishop takes the rook, then queen to e5 is a very deadly threat, right? So that is why. So king cannot come to f6. So king to e7, and white. Yeah, see, white cannot take the queen yet, because white's queen is also under attack, right? So please notice that. So queen to f3 first, threatening the bishop on f6, and then if queen goes to f8, right, then there is a very neat tactic now, very beautiful tactic. You have to see this. Knight takes f6. Queen to e3, I'm not sure, because king will go to, I don't know, king will go to e6 probably, right? So, or f7. So yeah, it is, but see here, knight takes f6. Yeah, knight takes f6, and if queen takes f6, then rook to d7. Now king cannot take the rook, otherwise queen will fall, right? So king comes to e6, but if king comes to e6, then queen d5 check. Now it is really getting over, and now rook to f7, right? So very neat tactics towards the end, very instructive. So please go through this game, I think, a couple of times so that you look at and understand what are all the blows, counter blows, and tactics, etc. It is very good. So such games you should go through it multiple times so that, yeah, it is game over right now because there is no chance. If queen takes rook, then white is simply ahead by queen versus rook, right? And the king is completely in the center. In fact, king is going to get checkmated now, black king. So yeah, this is a very old game. Huh? See, this is from 1874. So this is even before Steinitz became first time world champion in 1886, even before that, 12 years before that. So many times these old games are, it is better to study because the concepts are easier to understand in this. It is a kind of direct threats and direct defenses. Okay, now if you see a modern grandmaster game, all of these they will already have it internalized, and so what the level that they will play, it will be difficult to understand easily. Okay, there will be so many direct, indirect threats, indirect threats, and to which they will be responding. But here in these kind of games, especially from the 19th century, if you see, you will be able to follow them easily and you will be able to understand what is going on with a little bit of effort.
So,
Yeah.
like, what do people have to do to become to become a world champion?
To become a world champion, it is
Yes,
simple.
sir.
You have to only defeat the existing world champion. Then you become world champion.
Okay. So when Carlsen defeated Karpov, he became the world champion.
So Carlsen defeated Anand in Chennai in 2013, and
No, he
2007.
defeated Karpov when he was like 14 or 15, I think.
no, but Karpov was not world champion at that time. He was ex-world champion. See, Karpov was world champion in 1975 to 1985. Okay, so after that, Karpov was only an ex-world champion. So you have to
So,
defeat current world champion, right?
sir, Nakamura defeated Carlsen, so but he still isn't the world champion.
Yeah, so it is like not in just one game. You have to defeat him in a match. Okay. So one game it is possible because all these grandmasters play so many tournaments, right? Sometimes like Nepom Nishi has got a +3 score against Carlsen. He has won 4 games while Carlsen has won only once against Nepom in classical chess, which is full time control, right? But so that is okay. So at least okay, that is at least, see, if you defeat an existing world champion even in any format once, at least it will show you that you are a world class player. And then you have to actually, to become a world champion, you have to defeat him in the match, which match consists of 12 or 16 games. Earlier it used to be 24 games. Then it became, in the current 21st century, 24 games were like considered too much. So 12 games, but this year I hear it is a 16 game match in Dubai, in November. No, it is not best of 7. No. It is at least best of 12, at least 12 games, but maybe more. So this time it is going to be 16 games. So it will be interesting to watch in November. Okay. All right. Cool. So now let us move our attention to, no, it is not annual, it is biannual. So it is every 2 years currently. So 2000, what was that? I think 2014 return match Anand also lost to Carlsen. 2016, I believe it was, who was that? Yeah, it was Karyakin uh, who played Carlsen. They drew in the 12 games, they drew, but then in the tiebreaker rapid games, Carlsen defeated Karyakin. And 2018, it was Caruana. Yeah, and Caruana also was a Carlsen was also a draw in the 12 games, 6-6. And again in the tie breaks, Carlsen defeated. Right, so let us see what will happen this year. It was supposed to be 2020. Last year it was supposed to be the World Championship, but because of the Corona and all, the candidates tournament in March itself got suspended. So it happened, the second half of the candidates happened this year in March. So it was also 12 months delay. So because of that, the World Championship also has got delayed by 12 months. But we'll see it in 2021, definitely we'll see it. It will be interesting to watch. Yeah. Okay, let us go to the 2 positions. Two positions. F4, right? Now we are into F4. Fourth fortnight. Yeah. Third, position number 13, white to play. First of all, see these, some of these are difficult. Huh? So this is a difficult to fully assess because you don't know exactly what is that thing. So, but let us see. Let us see. Explain your ideas. What? Just tell. It's not necessary to tell the full solution, but you can even tell what you observe in this position. You tell. Okay, Madhura is saying Queen D4, but Madhura, what do you observe in this position? So let us go step by step. And you can take on audio or F pawn is pinned. Yeah, that is a very key observation. The black's F pawn is pinned. Then
White's rook is
white's rook
under
is
attack.
attacked. Yeah, white's rook is attacked. That is correct. What is the material balance?
Black is one pawn down.
Yeah, black is 1 pawn down, white is 1 pawn ahead, right? But see, so if you look at it from white's perspective, yeah, white ideally you would like to win outright if there is some move and using the f7 pin, etc. But if not, even then white is actually 1 pawn ahead. So even if nothing white does and simply exchanges everything, he's very likely to win in the end game. Okay, but right now his rook is attacked and this white rook on h1 is badly placed. It cannot go to h3, and if it goes to h2 it will be kind of out of play, right? You would not like to put the rook to h2 just to defend it, right? So that is white's problem. Okay, and white also has got some attacking. So let us see. See, rook coming to g6 is a key threat of white, if not for the rook on h1 being under threat, right? Or even with that, rook to g6 is a key threat. Why it is a key threat? Because black's bishop and knight, both of them are in one line and they are not defending. And white can say that, oh, I will pick up both of your minor pieces for my rook, and it is an advantage for white because rook is worth 5 points and two minor pieces are worth 6 points. So rook to g6 is a key threat here, right? What would you do if you support the bishop with the pawn? It will be a very weak pawn it will become, and then the rook will come to, in fact will come to g5, attack the queen, etc., and it will be in a good this one. So no, h5 defends both, but it is not a good move, h5. Okay, because rook will come a very good square on g5, attacking the queen, plus it will do few more damages it will do.
I think Queen D4 is the right move.
And so tell me what happens with rook to g6? Why rook g6?
That can be met with Queen to H5. Queen
Yeah.
H5.
Queen h5 is one key defensive move that black has got. So not pawn to h5 but queen to h5. So queen to h5 will defend the bishop also, attack the rook also, and the rook cannot come to g5 anymore because the pawn is there on h6. So it will throw away a spanner. It will put a spanner in white's plan. So otherwise, but all of this you have to notice it. So rook to g6 is a key threat. You have to notice it, but it is parried by queen to h5, right? So yeah, so rook to g6, queen to h5, queen to d4 will not help because queen h5 will take the rook on g6, right? So that is what will happen. So instead here, so the other move that Madhura is suggesting or somebody else is suggesting, queen to d4. What is the threat with queen to d4? What can black do? I will just check.
Rook d8. Rook d8.
Sorry, rook to
D8. D8.
yeah,
Rook a to d8.
rook to d8. Then rook to d8 is a decentish move, right? Because it will force an exchange of rooks. In fact, but white is happy with rook to d8. Why? Think one more ahead and then you will know why. White will simply play rook from h to d1, and now he will say, okay, you want to exchange, I will also want to exchange everything on d8, and I am very happy to go into an endgame with one pawn up. Right? That is why rook to d8 from black side is not a good move. Okay, but can black knight take the rook on h1? Let us see. That is the main threat, right? So queen to d4. What if knight to h1?
Rook g6.
Then rook g6 becomes a very powerful threat because you are threatening checkmate on g7. The f pawn is pinned, it cannot move, queen cannot go anywhere and defend. So it is a really, there is hardly any defense, right? So that is the key thing. Queen to d4 is good, not just because of the mate threat, is that black cannot touch the rook on h1. Okay, if black touches the rook on h1, then black is going to get mated or in very bad shape, and hence black has to defend itself. And by the time black defends itself, then the rook on h1 will come to a very good square, either on e1 or d1 it will come, and then white is clearly a pawn ahead and white will continue, right? So that is the thing. So many times what happens is, see, I'll tell you what, I first saw rook to g6 and I could not see a good defense for black till queen h5 came. So I was always thinking something will happen with rook g6. Okay, but actually what happened was queen to d4 was the right move, with next move being rook to g6. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes you see some move, good move, but it is not working out. Keep it and see if as a second move that and something else in the first move whether it works. Many times you will get a solution like that. Okay, something it is, because those threats, it is that all those threats combine with each other, first this and then that, or first that and then this. Sometimes you just play around and you will be able to see more things. Okay, fine. So let us look at the next position. Number 14, white to play. Which one, Nandan? Are you referring to the question 14 with your comment? I didn't understand.
13th one, sir. 13th one.
13 one. Okay, fine. Now let us look at 14. Yeah, what Madhura is saying, there is a knight.
Rook takes f7.
Huh? Sorry?
So rook takes f7.
Rook takes f7 is a very key threat. And why? Because, yeah, you have noticed it. There is a knight fork on e6 possible. Currently, it is prevented only by the pawn on f7. So why don't we eliminate the pawn, right? So rook takes f7, but if black takes back with the rook, then obviously there is a fork. Black cannot take back with the king. What else can black do? King takes f7 is not possible because knight is there on g5. Yeah. So yeah. So king to g8. Yeah, king to g8. Now king to g8, what do you do?
Sir, rook g7. Check.
That is a very if you saw it yourself, congratulations, pat yourself on the back, because up to, see, rook takes f7, it is easy to see, but on king g8 you have to see rook to g7 also, still sacrificing the rook. If king takes it, then in the fourth. What if knight takes it?
Queen h7 checkmate.
Then queen h7 checkmate, right? So that is the thing. And what if king goes to h8? Then rook takes h7. Continue with it.
Yeah.
Then king will have to again come back to g8. Then king comes back to g8. Again you bring rook to g7. Check. Again everything is same again. So knight cannot take it, king cannot take it. So king will have to go to h8 again. Now you pick up the third pawn. You pick up the g6 pawn also. No, it's not a draw. No. Whenever white wants, white can finish black now. See, you have eaten up all the 3 pawns you have eaten up. Now, after rook takes g6, the knight is also gone now, right? And it is almost becoming a checkmate now. So it is going to end now after that. But you saw that, I mean, rook takes f7, then rook takes, g7 check, then rook takes h7, again g7 check, and then rook takes g6. So that is a very, very powerful. So it is a very, very instructive position. You have to see it like really in depth, and you have to see it to internalize it. See, starting from a very simple concept of fork, but then it goes into more and more, and you get the full thing. So what it teaches is that you continue the threats and see, take it as much long as possible and see it. Don't just give up in between. So yeah. So very, very instructive position. And so many things are there, right? Knight comes to g7, then queen h7 mate, king takes thing, knight e6 is check and fork, etc. But in general, I think what is the antenna? Your antenna for detecting this is queen and king. Whenever they are in a forkable position, first of all, it should alert something. And then if you have a knight which can jump to it, then it is a double alert. Now you have to just see whether you can make it happen even by sacrificing something, right? So here the knight on g5 eyeing e6 square and queen being on c7 and g7. That's why, I mean, if you do a lot of tactics, then this will throw up your antennas immediately. Then you will start something is there. You will start thinking, right? So okay. So all right. So that is that. I will stop the recording. Any other question or any